Chapter 3 The Letter from No One. Escape of Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holiday had started and Dudley was already broken his new cinema camera, crushed his remote control airplane, and first time on his racing bike, knocked down old Mrs. Fig as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visits the house every single day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all big and stupid, but as Dudley was the biggest and stupidest of the all, he was the leader. The rest of them was so all quite happy to join in Dudley's favorite subject, Harry hunting. This was why Harry spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holiday, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school, and for the first time in his life, he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had a place at Uncle Bernard's old school, Smeltings. Piers Pockets was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High. The local comparsa Dudley thought this was very funny. They stuck people's head down the toilet first day at Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The pool toilets never had anything as horrible as your head down it. It might be sick. Then he ran. Before Dudley could work out what he'd meant. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his smelting uniform, leaving Harry at Mrs. Fig's. Mrs. Fig wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping over one of her cats, and she didn't seem quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she had it for several years. That evening, Dudley pranced around the living room for the family in his brand new uniform. Smelting boys wore modern tailcoats, orange knickerbockers, and flat steel hats called Buster. They also carried knobbly sticks, used for hitting each other while the teacher wasn't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later life. As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbockers, Uncle Bernard said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and said she couldn't believe it was her Icky Duddekins. He looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought two of his lips might already have cracked from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen next morning. When Harry went in for breakfast, it seems to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what looked like dusty legs swimming in grey water. What is that? He asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened as they always did if he dared to ask questions. Your new school uniform, she said. Have you looked in the bowl again? Oh, he said. I didn't realize it has to be so wet. Don't be stupid, snapped Aunt Petunia. I'm dying some of Dudley's old things great for you. It'll look just like everyone else's when I'm finished. Harry seriously doubted this, but though it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High, as he was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Benny came in, both with wrinkled noses because of the smell from Harry's new uniform. Uncle Benny opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged his smelting stick, which he carried everywhere, on the table. They they heard the stick tick up a letterbox and flop the letter on the doormat. Get the post, Dudley, said Uncle Benny from behind his paper. Make Harry get it. Get the post, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley. Harry dodged the smelting stick and went to get the post. 3 things laid on the doormat. The postcard from Uncle Ben and Sister Marge, who was holidaying on the Isle of Wight. A brown envelope that looked like a bill and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared at it, his heart tingling like a great electric band. No one ever in his whole life had written to him. Who would? He had no friends, no other relatives. He didn't belong to the library, so he never even got rude notes asking for books back. Yet here it was, a letter, addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment, and the address was written in emerald green ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hand trembled. Harry saw a purple wax seal being a coat of arms, the lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake, surrounding a large H. Hurry up, boy, shouted Uncle Benny from the kitchen. What are you doing? Checking for letter bombs? He chuckled at his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Benny the bill and the postcard, sat down and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. Uncle Benny ripped open the bill, snorted in disgust, and flipped over the postcard. Marge is ill, he informed Aunt Petunia. It's a funny work. Dad, said Dudley suddenly, Dad, Harry gets something. Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, which was written on the same heavy parchment as the envelope, when it was jacked sharply out of his hand by Uncle Benny. That's mine, said Harry, trying to snatch it back. Who'd be writing to you? Said Uncle Benny, shaking the letter open in one hand and glanced at it. His face went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights. And it didn't stop there. Within a second, it was the greyish white of old parchment. Petunia, he gasped. Dudley tried to grab the letter to read it, but Uncle Benny held it high up out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took a curiously and read the first line. For a moment it looked as though she might faint. She caught her thought and made a choking noise. Burning! Oh my goodness, burning! They stared at each other, seemed to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still at the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap of the head with his melting stick. I want to read the letter, he said loudly. I want to read it, said Harry furious, as it's mine. Get out, both of you, choked Uncle Bennet, stuffing the letter back into the envelope. Harry didn't move. I want my letter, he shouted. Let me see it, demanded Dudley. Out, roared Uncle Bennet, and he took both Harry and Dudley by the stop of their neck and threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Harry and Dudley promptly had a furious but silent fight over who would listen at the keyhole. Dudley won, so Harry, his glasses dangling from one ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen at the crack behind the door and floor. Vernon, Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice. Look at the address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house? Watching, spying, might be following us, muttered Uncle Bennet wisely. But that wouldn't we that shouldn't we do, Vernon? Should we write back? Tell them we don't want Harry to see Uncle Bennet's back shoes prancing up and down the kitchen. No, he said finally. No, we'll ignore it. If they don't get an answer, yes, that's the best. We won't do anything. But I'm not having one in the house, Petunia. Didn't we swear when we took him in? We stopped at that dangerous nonsense. That evening, when he got back from work, Uncle Bennet did something he'd never done before. He visited Harry in his cupboard. Where is my letter? Said Harry. The moment Uncle Bennet had squeezed through the door. Who's writing to me? No one. It was addressed to you by mistake, said Uncle Bennet shortly. I have burned it. It was not a mistake, said Harry angrily. It had my cupboard on it. Silence! Yelled Uncle Bennet, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceilings. He took a few deep breaths and then faced his face into a smile, which looked quite painful. Harry, yeah. How about this cupboard? Your aunt and I had just been talking. You're really getting big for it. We think if it might be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom. Why? Said Harry. Don't ask questions, snapped his uncle. Take your stuff upstairs. Now. The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Bennet and Aunt Petunia, one for Beatrice, usually Uncle Bennet's sister Marge, one for Dudley, slept at one and where Dudley kept old toys and things that wasn't fit into his first bedroom. It only took Harry one trip upstairs to move everything he owned from the cupboard to this bedroom. He sat down on the bed and stared around him. Nearly everything in here was broken. A month-old cine camera was lying on top of a small walking trunk Dudley had once driven about next door's dog. In the corner was Dudley's first ever television set, which he put his foot through it when his favorite program had been cancelled. There was a large bird cage which had once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped at school for a real air rifle, which was up on the shelf with an old band because Dudley had sat on it. Other shelves were full of books. They were the only thing on the room that looked as though they had ever been touched. From downstairs came a noise of Dudley bowing at his mother. I don't want him in there. I need that room. Make him go out. Harry sighed and scratched out of his bed. Yesterday he had given anything to be up here. Today he'd rather be back in his cupboard with that letter than up here without it. Next morning at breakfast, everyone was rather quiet. Dudley was in shock. He screamed, he yoked his father with his smelting stick, but being sick on purpose, kicked his mother and threw his toastful through the greenhouse roof, and he still didn't have his room back. Harry was thinking about this time yesterday and barely wishing he'd opened the letter in the hall. Uncle Ben and Aunt Petunia kept looking at each other darkly. When the post arrived, Uncle Ben, who seems to try to be nice to Harry, made Dudley go and get it. They heard him banging things with his smelting stick all the way down the hall. Then he shouts, "There's another one!" Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, for Privet Drive with a startling cry. Uncle Benny ripped from his seat and ran down the hall. Harry right, Harry right behind them. Uncle Benny was wrestling Dudley to the ground to get the letter from him, which was made difficult by the fact that Harry had grabbed Uncle Benny around the neck from behind. After a minute of confused fighting, in which everyone got hit a lot by a sweating stick, Uncle Ben straightened up, gasping for breath, with Harry's letter clutched in his hand. "Go to your cupboard. I mean your bedroom," he wheezed at Harry. "Dudley, go. Just go." Harry walked round and round in his new room. Someone knew he had moved out of his cupboard, and they seemed to know he hadn't received his first letter. Surely that meant they'd try again, and this time they'd make sure they didn't fail. He had a plan. The repair alarm clock rang at 6 o'clock the next morning. Harry turned it off quickly and dressed silently. He mustn't wake Uncle Vernon, wake the Dursleys. He stole downstairs without turning on any of the lights. He was going to wait for the postman on the corner of Privet Drive and get the letter from number 4 first. His heart hammered as he crept across the dark hall toward the front. Harry leaped into the air. He tossed on something big and squashy on the doormat, something alive. Light clicked on upstairs, and to his horror, Harry realized that the big squashy something had been in his uncle's face. Uncle Ben had been lying at the foot of the front door in the sleeping bag, clearly making sure that Harry didn't do exactly what he'd been trying to do. He shouted at Harry for about half an hour and then told him to go and make some cup of tea. Harry sulked this miserably up to the kitchen, and by the time he got back, the post had arrived right into Uncle Ben's wrap. Harry could see 3 letters addressed in green ink. "I What? He began, but Uncle Bannon was tearing the letter into pieces before his eyes. Uncle Bannon didn't go to work that day. He stayed at home and nailed up the letterbox. See, he explained to Aunt Petunia through the mouthful of nails. If they don't deliver they'll just give up. I'm not sure they'll work, Bannon. Oh, those people's minds work in strange way, Petunia. There's nothing not like you and me, said Uncle Danny, trying to knock the nails with the piece of fruitcake Aunt Petunia had just brought him. On Friday, no for the 12th letter arrived for Harry. As they couldn't go through the nail box, they they had been pushed under the door, sorted through the side of the few even space through the small window on the downstairs toilet. Uncle Bannon stayed at home again. After burning all the letters, he got up and hammered the nails and boarded up the crack around the front and back door so no one could go out. He hummed tiptoe through the tips as he worked, and jumped uh, at small noises. On Saturday, things began to go out of hand. 24 letters for Harry found way into the house, rolled up and hidden inside each of 2 dozen eggs that they very confused milkman and handed Aunt Petunia through the living room window, while Uncle Bannon made furious telephone call at the post office and to deliver, trying to find someone to complain to. Aunt Petunia searched the letters in her food mixer. Who on earth wants to talk to you like this badly? Dudley asked Carrie in amazement. On Sunday morning, Uncle Vernon sat down at the breakfast table, looking tired and rather ill, but happy. No post on Sunday, he reminded them happily as he sprayed marmalade on his newspaper. No drum letters today. Something came whizzing down the kitchen chimney as he spoke, and caught him sharply on the back of his head. Next moment, 30 or 40 letters come panting out of the fireplace like a bullet. The Dudleys ducked, but Harry leaped into the air to catch one. Out! Out! Uncle Bunny seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall, where Aunt Petunia and Dudley had run out with their arms over their faces. Uncle Bunny slammed the door shut. They could hear the letters still streaming into the room, bouncing off the walls and the floor. That does it, said Uncle Ben, trying to speak calmly but pulling great thought out of his mustache at the same time. I want you all back here in 5 minutes, ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes. No urgent. He looked as he looked so dangerous, with half his mustache missing, that no one dare argue. 10 minutes later, they had punched their way through the bolted up doors and were in the car, speeding toward the motorway. Dolly was sleeping in the back seat. His father had hit him around the head for holding them up while he tried to pack his television, video, and computer in his sports bag. They drove and they drove. Even Aunt Petunia didn't dare ask where they were going. Every now and then, Uncle Vernon could take a sharp turning and drive in the opposite direction for a while. Shake them off. Shake them off. Could he would mutter whenever he does it. They didn't stop to eat or drink all day. By night time, Dudley was howling. He ever had such a bad day in his life. He was hungry. He missed 5 television programs he'd wanted to see, and he'd never gone so wrong without blowing up an alien on his computer. Uncle Bannon stopped at last outside a gloomy-looking hotel on outskirts of big city. Dudley and Harry shared a room with twin beds and clumsy seat. Dudley snored, but Harry stayed awake, sitting on the windowsill, staring down at the light of passing cars and wondering. They ate their cornflakes and canned tomatoes on toast for breakfast next day. They had just finished when the owner of the hotel came over to their table. Sorry, me, but is one of you Mr. H. Potter? Only I got about 100 of these at the front desk. She held up a letter so they could read a green ink address. Mr. H. Potter, Room 17, Railview Hotel, Cockwell. Harry made to grab the letter, but Uncle Bennet knocked his hand out of the way. The woman said, "I'll take them," said Uncle Bennet, standing up quickly and following her from the dining room. "Wasn't it better just to go home, dear?" Aunt Petunia suggested timidly. Hour later, but Uncle Bennet didn't seem to hear her. Exactly what he was looking for, none of them knew. He drove down into a mirror of the forest, got out, looked around, shook his head, got back into the car, and off they went again. The same thing happened in the middle of the smoking field, halfway across a sunken bridge, and that at the top of a multi-storied car. "Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?" Dudley asked. Aunt Petunia dully late at that afternoon. Uncle Bennet had popped at the coast, rocked them all inside the car, and disappeared. It started to rain. Great drop beat on the roof of the car. Dudley squealed. "It's Monday," he told his mother. "The great hunt's on tonight. I want to stay somewhere with a television." Monday. This reminded Harry of something. Was Monday, and he could usually count on Dudley to know the day of the week because of television. Then tomorrow, Tuesday, and Harry's 11th birthday. Of course, his birthday were never exactly fun. Last year, the Dudley had given him a coat hanger and pair of Uncle Bennet's old stock. Still, he wasn't 11 every day. Uncle Bennet was back and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thick package and didn't answer Aunt Petunia when she asked what he'd brought. "Find the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone out." It was very cold outside the car. Uncle Bennet was pointing at the what looked like a large rock by out the sea. Perched on top of the rock was the most remarkable little shack you could imagine. One thing was certain. There was no television in there. "Storm forecast for tonight," said Uncle Benny gravely, clapping his hands together. "And this gentleman's kindly agreed to lend us his boat." A toothless old man came rumbling out to them, pointing at rather Chen at the old rowing boat bowing in a Ryan great water below them. "I already got us some rations," said Uncle Bonnet, "so all aboard." It was freezing in the boat. Icy seas splashed and rain crept down their necks, and a chilly wind whipped their faces. After what seemed like hours, they reached the rock, where Uncle Bonnet, strapped and slinking, led the way to a broken-down house. The inside was horrible. It smelled strongly of seaweed. The wind west through the gap in wooden well, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There were only 2 rooms. Uncle Ben's ration turned out to be a packet of chips, each and 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire, but the empty crab pocket just smoked and shriveled up. "Could do with some of those letters, he said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood. Obviously, he thought nobody stood a chance for reaching them here in a storm to deliver post. Harry probably agreed. So, and that didn't cheer him at all. The night fell. The promised storm blew up around them. The ice splash from a highway spattered the walls of the hut, and fierce wind rattled the whipped windows. Aunt Petunia found a few muddy blankets in the second room and made up a bed for Dudley on a moth-eaten sofa. She and Uncle Bonnet went off to a rumpy bed next door, and Harry was left to find the softest bit of floor he could and to curl up under the tiniest, most ragged blanket. The storm rose more and more fiercely as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to be comfortable. His stomach rumbled with hunger. Dudley snored were down by a roll of thunder that started near midnight. The lighted dial of Dudley's watch, which was dangling over the edge of the sofa on his fat waist, told Harry he'd be 11 in 10 minutes' time. He lay and watched his birthday tick nearer, wondering if the Dudleys would remember at all, wondering where the letter writer was now. 5 minutes to go. Harry heard something creak outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall in, although he might be warmer if it did. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house is in Privet Drive would be full of letters when they got back that Harry could able to steal one somehow. 3 minutes to go. But was that the sea splashing hard on the rock like that? And 2 minutes to go. What was the funny crunching noise? Was the rock tumbling into the sea? 1 minute to go, and he would be 11. 30 seconds. 20, 10, 9. Maybe he woke Dudley up just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1, boom! The whole shack shattered, and Harry sat bolt upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside, knocking to come in.